Walsh here. This is a beginner's guide to embodiment. So in this little video / podcast, I'm going to let you know what embodiment is, how to get more embodied, the basics, some of the things you might want to know if you've maybe you've heard the word and you're like, well, what is it exactly? Or you've just started getting into it. You're like, what is embodiment? So beginner's guide to embodiment. First of all, just a little bit about who the hell I am. If this is the first video or podcast of mine you've found. So this has been my life's work really for the last 20 years, at least full time. Starting off with martial arts, with Aikido, while I was studying psychology at university, really going into conscious dance, improv, body therapy, lots and lots of yoga, all kinds of things. I mean, these are the constituent arts actually of embodiment we'll come to in a bit. And I've interviewed, I'd say, something like 400 embodiment teachers now, taught a few thousand coaches, worked with embodiment corporate groups in war zones in Ukraine most recently, wrote several books on the topic, blah, 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 to the point where I'd get interviewed and people would say, oh, you're Mr. Embodiment, which is a bit cheesy and a bit embarrassing sometimes. But I get why they say that. So I'm probably qualified to do a little beginner's guide for this. I do like working with beginners and teaching beginners actually as well. Someone's banging outside. Anyway, so beginner's guide to embodiment. What do you need to know? Okay, definition. So embodiment is the subjective study of the body. So the body we can think of as an object, as a thing. However, just intuitively, that doesn't really ring true for most people. So most people will have a sense, they'll say my body, but there'll be a sense that in some way their body is them. So someone touches you, they're touching you. They're not just touching something you own, like this pen or something. So the subjective meaning felt, meaning awareness-based. So this is what it has in common with mindfulness. Mindfulness is being aware of the body. Embodiment is being aware as a body or inhabiting a body. So the subjective study of the body, and that includes all these arts that look at the body that way. So we can say it's sort of umbrella term for anything which is involved body awareness, but also working on the self through the body. So this is where embodiment is maybe different from just being aware of the body. We're actually developing ourselves through the body. So the main kind of historical areas that would include would be yoga. So again, yoga could just be physical, right? It could just be exercise, or necessarily involving that subjective element, particularly in the modern context, but it has been traditionally. Yoga, something called conscious dance, just jumping around like a crazy hippie, could be part of dance, though less so sort of historically. Martial arts historically have been embodied arts. We have what we could call the Western somatic practices. So somatic, sometimes a synonym with embodied, sometimes kind of like a subset within the embodiment world. Things like Alexander technique, Feldenkrais, there's a whole bunch of sort of Western awareness-based practices that could be in there. Body therapy and dance movement therapy, which are kind of very close together. One was kind of therapists who started working with the body, starting from a guy called Reich, who was a student of Freud. Others were dancers who took up therapy. And a lot of those were students of Jung, particularly women mostly in Central Europe, round about would have been just before World War II, kind of 20s and 30s. Of course, embodiment has shamanic roots, ancient roots, tribal practices from Africa, from all over the world, North American traditions. But in this kind of modern context, these are the arts. Theatre definitely has an embodied tradition. So some method acting. Stanislav, is it? That's one of the areas I'm least versed in. So theatre right through to improv, comedy improv, definitely an embodied art. So that's a major one there. And then sort of hands-on body work. Again, could just be physical. Someone could work on your shoulder just as a piece of meat, or they could work on it as part of you, your nervous system, you as a person. So umbrella art, of course, you could say, well, is surfing embodied? What about gardening? Yeah, you could make those things embodied, but they tend not to have a tradition of that. Even something like, I lift weights in the gym. Now I do that as an embodied practice. You could be pushing away, you simply to develop your pectorals and triceps, your anterior deltoid, or you could actually be practicing like boundaries, whether that be a chaturanga, which is like a yoga push-up, or weightlifting. It doesn't really matter. It's how you're doing it, how you're relating to it. So someone could be in the gym or in a yoga class doing embodiment, or they could just be doing mindfulness, like feeling their body, nothing wrong with that. Or they could be doing exercise, not feeling their body, just working with the body as an object. For fitness, nothing wrong with that. Sometimes I just do some pull-ups. I'm not trying to embody anything. Totally fine and a different thing. So one of the reasons I'm making a beginner's guide to embodiment is the term's got very popular over the last sort of 5 years. And that's partly my fault, partly just kind of a trend in the world. You'll see hashtag embodiment all over, Instagram or whatever. Embody this, embody that. I'm waiting for Embodiment Cafe, like you get Buddha Cafe and you get kind of Buddha statues in the garden center and stuff. So it's a sort of sign that it's popular, it's trending, that's great. But also, a semicolon is not an orange, right? Paris is not the capital of Germany. Things have meaning, and embodiment does have a meaning. Yeah. I think key to this idea of embodiment is body and mind being so linked that there's no separate mental phenomena. You're not. I'll give you an example of this actually. Like science fiction, you'll see movies where someone's brain gets transferred into a vat and then they're the same person, or into a robot, or their consciousness gets transplanted to another body. Like there's that film Big with Tom Hanks, it's showing my age. It's like a kid and an adult gets trade minds. But that wouldn't work, because as soon as you're in another body, you're another person. Hormonally, the nervous system, the whole setup. So the key idea of embodiment is things we tend to think of as not bodily are bodily. So sometimes I call these the functions of the body. So, physicality, transport, there's the basic ones that we would all think of as bodily. But cognition, thought, you think differently when you're in different positions, standing, how you stand, walk, breathe, move, that affects your thinking. And they're the basic tools of embodiment. So, do I have to do something crazy and esoteric, like stand on my head or do breath work or something? You could do that. That might be fun, might be interesting, might be productive, but you can just work breath, posture, breathing, movement. These are the fundamentals of embodiment: awareness itself, intention, relationality. There's not many more. It's about it. So that affects our thinking. It also affects how we see the world. Like when you're on holiday and you're relaxed, everyone seems nice. You're like, oh yeah. So it's affecting my relationships. It's affecting my emotion. Try doing, jumping jacks or star jumps, they call them in Europe, and say, I'm depressed. I'm depressed. It just seems so weird. Your body and your emotions are interlinked. It's actually the body's how you do emotions. How we do ourselves, how we are, the manner of our relational ontology, that's a posh way of saying how we are. That is embodiment. That's the simplest definition. So when people get into embodiment, they're working with their thoughts, their perceptions, their emotions, their relationships. So therefore, also their leadership, their parenting, their, if they're a facilitator, whether they're funny or not, whether they can flirt or not. Another way of looking at embodiment is as a set of skills. So that's the definition, subjective. There's practices within it that constitute that world. And then there's also skill sets. I use this when I work in business, for example, very concrete. What are those skills? Awareness and choice, self and other, okay, or awareness and leadership, self and other. So we could also say short-term and long-term. If you look at my books, various podcasts I've done on embodied intelligence, you will map this more than I will today. But it's mappable and it's concrete. So you can get better or worse at being aware of your state. All right. So I know what energy level I have right now, what mood I'm in, the general state I'm in. And specifically, I could be aware of my breath. I can feel my pulse in my hand. I can feel my pulse in my left toe, my breathing rate, general kind of blood pressure, kind of warmth, and then the more subjective sort of potential for what I want to do, right? Whether I want to be critical or whether I want to be curious or whether I want to be playful or seductive or whatever. They're all states, yeah? You can get better or worse at that. No one teaches you that at school. You sort of learn it to some extent. Like the average person has a bit of awareness of their embodiment in terms of state. Not that much, however. So you'll get, people say, I'm not angry, or, like little kids like, I'm not tired. I'm like, you look tired. Maybe it's time for bed. Yeah. So we do grow that to some extent, but you can really fine tune that. Why would you want to fine tune that? Kind of why be embodied? actually step back, why be more consciously embodied? So we're all unconsciously embodied. We're all creating and expressing a set of norms, a set of typicalities, a set of preferences. We're shaped a certain way, and everybody else can see that. Like, yeah, I don't know, like there's a pregnant cat that's come into the house while I'm recording this, who's been friendly the last few days. And that cat is aware that me and my wife are kind of safe people to be around. If a pregnant cat wouldn't come and make its home in your house otherwise. A child can do that, right? Says, Dad in a good mood or a bad mood. So becoming more consciously aware of that, and that includes both state, which I was just discussing, right? But also trait, which you can't feel through mindfulness. Okay, so when the cat or a small kid or me or you or anyone meets you, they're aware of your state. They're picking that up: tired, good mood, bad mood. Simple versions of it. You can get much more specific than that. And they're also aware of your trait, because that's both coming across. Yeah, so it's a bit more than body language, because it's actually in any moment creating and shaping how we are. Yeah, so you can become more aware of that, both the states and the traits, and you can change that. So it's not just being like, oh, I'm mindful, I'm aware. Look, I'm really angry. Look at that. It's not that. It's actually being able to regulate yourself. That might involve expression. It might not. So expression, regulation, these are embodiment skills. Some people are better at expressing. You'll see this culturally. Our culture is part of our embodiment. Some cultures are very tight and rigid, like English, Japanese, Germans, and some like Brazil, Italy, much more expressive. Yeah, so we're culturally embodied as well as personally embodied. Both of those things are always true. You're not acultural, even if your parents were from different locations and you've moved around a bit. So we have personality, we have a culture, we're in a situation. So, there is a situational element, like right now I'm in a particular place. I'm in Portugal, I'm in a flat on Airbnb, it's a certain environment. It'd be very different if I was just outside looking over the beautiful vista, the green hills of Portugal, very different, yeah. So we're in a situation, an environment. Teaching right now, this is a certain embodiment, right? Like if I was just hanging out with my wife and I had this embodiment, it'd be a bit weird. So I was like, hey, here's the salt for dinner. So there's a relationship, and kind of a presumed relationship in this case. Hello, person in the future, somewhere in the world. So yeah, all that's going on. These are the contexts of embodiment. And there's awareness and choice, so self-regulation, self-awareness. And then you've also got the other people's side. So empathy, picking up on other people, being aware of other people, reading other people. That's empathic and cognitive. You can get much better at that. Then influence, the last part. So this is the idea that we can make people laugh, we can calm them down, we can inspire them, we can turn them on, blah, blah, blah. Hopefully you have some people influencing skills. That is mostly through the body. Of course, we use words as well. But, a good comedian, a good lover, a good whatever, they're using influence through the body. So yeah, they're the basic skill sets involved. And look up embodied intelligence that was a real quick. So if you want more on that. Maybe time to take a breath. Okay, what else do you need to know? Beginner's guide. So skill set, you can get better or worse at it. Some things you'll be naturally good at. Learning about your embodied type is really helpful. You could look up my work on 4 elements for an embodied typology, different personality types, really useful to map. I recommend that for beginners. Key thing though is how we learn embodiment, is we learn through practice. So I did another video and podcast on how to develop a practice. It was kind of like a New Year's one, but if you're watching this in July, the same stuff applies. So it's kind of a misunderstanding in our culture about learning. In Western culture, we mostly focus on learning about something, right? Like I could learn about parenting by reading a book. I could learn about Paris by reading a book. That's not the same as having kids. That's not the same as having been to Paris. It's not the same as practicing French. Not the same as practicing parenting. So the idea of embodiment is that we learn skills through practice, and we could say more deeper, or we could say being, the level of being. We're becoming something. So it's a truly transformational, ontological, being-based practice, meaning that embodiment isn't just what you say, it's what you are. And this is kind of a common sense definition of the word. You say, such and such embodies leadership, or such and such embodies this country, whatever it is. So that sense that things go deeper than talk. And I guess we all know that. And the fact that we sort of privilege cognitive learning is part of the sickness really of our culture that we think that, Wikipedia is going to solve all the world's problems. We just have all this information on our phones or whatever, and that's going to fix everything. And that's an issue because it won't. Now, this is what I found in my own life as well. And I think many people are drawn to embodiment. It's because they realize, like, hey, I've read all the books, I've listened to all the podcasts, whatever, but that isn't actually helping. I want to go a bit deeper than that. And there is something profoundly unhealthy about being cut off from our bodies, physically, mentally, socially, even ethically, profoundly unhealthy, being cut off from our bodies. So embodiment, we're back to this question, like, why bother with embodiment? Well, your sanity, your effectiveness, you won't be a very good coach or leader or yoga teacher or whatever without it. Also this ethical sense, like getting back to my values. Values are another thing that we think of as cognitive, but they're actually embodied. Yeah, no one wakes up in the morning with a list of values on an Excel spreadsheet and goes about their day. It's not how it works. You're just drawn to certain things, right? You're repulsed by certain things. You don't want to tell a lie because it feels gross, or you see someone hurting an animal and you go, oh, stop that. That's not cool. Kitty, come in. Back to the cat. We're cat obsessed right now in this household. That's an important feature of embodiment. So yeah, if you're new to embodiment, part of me is just wants to say, so like, welcome. And, do look up the stuff on practice. Yeah, you can learn a bit of theory, read my books, blah, blah, blah. Loads of free stuff here on the Bible, YouTube, podcast, etc. Social media, blah, blah, blah. The main thing, though, is just get a practice. And, in terms of someone says to me, how do I become more embodied? Practice is key, but the 3 Ps, this place, people, and practice. Of these, in some ways, practice is the least important, but it's the one you can control most. We need a practice, meditation every day, little check-ins every day, a bit of dancing, a bit of yoga. If you're new to embodiment, I'd say just do whatever brings you joy. Just do whatever you like, just whatever makes you happy, as long as it brings you more in your body. Afterwards, you'll be like, oh, that feels nice. And, the best practice is the one you do, right? So beginner's guide, just do whatever you like. If you're kind of been doing something for a while, you might want to balance it out and think about, like, what qualities is it building? What's missing? What skill sets do you want to build that you're not currently building? You might want to complement what you've been, if you've been doing yoga for 10 years on your own, you might want to complement that with a more relational practice, or if you're doing a very fiery practice, you might want a more watery one, or vice versa. And then obviously, if you want to be an embodiment coach, that's a whole other thing. We can help you with that, professionally. But I'd say that's not for beginners, right? That's for people who have been doing embodiment a while, who are at least kind of, regular embodiment practitioners a few years or more, to get in their own bodies first. So that comes first. So this being the beginner's guide, practice, people, hang out with other embodiment people. You kind of become who you hang out with, right? It's like you're the sum of all the people you hang out with. And certainly for me, having embodiment friends and colleagues is, huge. I was with my friend Alon the other day, just walking around the hills around here, and just hanging out with each other all day it's kind of like a spa day, super helpful, who you're with. Any kind of movement, should have mentioned that. Any kind of move your body anywhere, that's going to help. And last one is place. So people, practice, place. 3 Ps. Nature helps. Okay, so that might depend where you are. Like, I used to live in a city, but I'd spend 2 hours in the park every day on my coaching calls, just walking around the park. It's amazing. Walking on the seafront when I used to live in Brighton, let it all go at the end of the day, walking by the ocean. Even like the Thames in London or Central Park in New York, there's normally some nature. You can make an effort to be around. Plants in the house are good. Dogs are good. Sorry, cats, but dogs are a little bit better. Dogs, a bit more co-regulation. Anyway, nature, being around nature, so helpful for embodiment. So movement, nature, the people you're with, some kind of a practice, something simple, some meditation, some movement. I'd recommend both. It doesn't have to be esoteric. You don't have to do, threesome dolphins with chakra, crystal techniques. It's really just whatever you enjoy, what gets you moving, what gets you feeling, what gets you more in yourself. And it's self-reinforcing. This is the good thing, beginners. Generally, you'll do embodiment. You go, that feels nice. I would like to do that again. Now, there are exceptions to that. If you have a strong trauma background, that might be you come to the body and it's stressful or overwhelming. By the way, if you do, a lot of people do. I certainly did. Sort your trauma out. You won't get embodied without that. Lots of good therapies out there. The EMDR, some people like TRE or tapping. You can look these up. EMDR, TRE, EFT. They all have acronyms. What else is there? NARM, organic intelligence, somatic experiencing. There's loads of good stuff out there. So if you are fucked up, don't worry. You don't have to stay that way, or at least not as badly forever. You can do what I did. You can deal with that, at least to some extent, and that will stop. The trauma is a real barrier to the body embodiment because it's numbing. You don't want to go to the body because it's overwhelming. So that could be extremely helpful for many of us, nearly all of us. Some trauma work, but for some of us, it's a real prerequisite. But the trauma thing aside, generally coming to the body is going to be pleasant. It's going to feel good. It's going to make you better at whatever you do. You know, I know I go dancing. I'm going to have loads of great ideas. The next day, I'm going to wake up ready to work, clear-headed, ready to go. So you're going to get to bed in some time. Whew, you with me? So if you're a beginner's guide to embodiment, if you're listening to this, first thing I'd say is, you know, like get a bit of understanding of the field, you know, look up, you know, my books, a couple of podcast videos. I'm not the only person in this field. There's loads of great people out there. Yeah. So I get a bit embarrassed by Mr. Embodiment because it's not the Mr. I kind of feel like it should be a Mr. Loads of great teachers out there, including, you know, people who are competitors of mine, people in this field, some alive, some dead. Let me name a few. So in the sort of leadership space, Wendy Palmer, sadly recently deceased, Ginny Whitelaw, Richard Strozzi Heckler, Dylan Newcomb is fantastic, a peer of mine, Body Bainbridge Cohen and the whole what's called BMC movement. There's Continuum, loads of teachers that do that. Mary from New York, for example, Laura. I could mention like a million friends here. I'm slightly worried I'm going to miss friends and people. What else? In terms of embodiment, yeah, I just say if you're getting a teacher, and I really recommend that, don't try and do it on your own, make sure they've got a solid practice. So make sure they're not someone in their first few years or someone who's just purely an academic. I'd say stay away from the sort of super new age people because it tends to be transcendent, you know, rainbows and unicorns instead of into the body, which is the whole fucking point. You know, stay away from people without a sense of humor, especially the sort of woke crowd, the ones who are very much into battering everyone over the head with their intellect, sort of postmodern French style intellectualism. And it's not very kind, is my experience of those people. If it's not kind, it's not embodiment. And if it's overly intellectual like that, it's probably not either. Yeah. The whole movement culture thing is sort of on the edge of embodiment. So great people in that space, whether it be, you know, Fighting Monkey or Rafe Kelly, or there's various people in that space. Obviously, there's lots of yoga around the world. So, you know, find yourself a good yoga teacher. What's a good yoga teacher? Well, for embodiment, and you could, again, be doing yoga for other reasons, slow enough that you can get into your body. Yeah, I find the embodiment forms which are a bit rigid and or a bit athletic, like the hot yogas or the ashtangas, most vinyasa in big cities, not so good for embodiment. More the slower, the hatha, the yin, just sort of gentle flow stuff. And obviously it depends on the teacher and the style, one with good boundaries, one who isn't too rigid, one that enables you to do some variation yourself. Very, very helpful. Conscious dance, I've mentioned. Look up fire rhythms or movement medicine or ecstatic dance. I'm a bit wary of ecstatic dance, tends to be woo, rather than say good fire rhythms or movement medicine or open floor class. You can look up those. Recommend those. Martial arts can be super good, especially if you want to work at boundaries, fierceness. For some people, it's like, you know, masculinity or feeling safe again as a woman. You know, there's healing in that. There's many reasons to do martial arts, but it's helped me a lot. And again, a lot comes down to the teacher. So I'd say, you know, if you are new to embodiment, don't think, oh, all Aikido is the same or all yoga is the same. Or, hey, I tried yoga once, I didn't like it. Or I tried tango once, I didn't like it, so I'm not doing it again. Check it out. You know, do you feel good? Are you more in your body at the end of the class than before? Not just about pumping your state, however, that's where you need to be a little bit careful as a beginner. Be careful of people offering like lots of shortcuts with like really strong, you know, ayahuasca plus breath work plus sexual hardcore tantra. I mean, any of those things could be helpful. You know, I've gained from tantra work, I've gained from breath work a lot. But if it's really like strongly like pumping your state and getting you high, that isn't the safest or most sustainable form of embodiment. Other things to be a bit careful of. Cautions. So actually, I didn't really do resources, did I? So there's books, there's podcasts, there's YouTube, mine and other people's. finding teachers that are ethical and suit you, which brings us to precautions. Teachers who aren't abusing you financially or sexually is the big one. Sadly, like anything that focuses this powerful, kind of emotive, personal growth thing, there are people in the embodiment space who are predatory in terms of like fucking their students, for example. Now, I have been a massive horn dog over the years, but I haven't done that. And I'm proud of that because I think it's an abuse, and be very, very careful with teachers that say sleep with students or who shall charge ridiculous fees, want crazy money. I mean, if you do one of our professional courses, it costs a bit of money because it has to, but it's not thousands of thousands, and you don't have to pay it every year as a subscription or whatever. Be very careful of anyone who says theirs is the one true way. No, you see, as I've described it, you're probably getting this, like embodiment is big. Like no one in a lifetime can do everything. I can't, and I do a lot, but I'm embodied everything in every practice perfectly. So if anyone comes along and says, my practice has everything you need, or this is the one true way, run a mile. Be very careful of that. Other things to be a bit careful of, well, sometimes people get almost too into embodiment and then they kind of become a bit flaky and a bit go with the flow and forget about their commitments and being organized. They're so present at the moment, but it's not really a problem for beginners. It tends to be 10 years down the line kind of thing. I think they're the main ones. But I just kind of must be Bruce Willis. Welcome to the party, pal. Yeah, welcome to the party. And I really want to, welcome you to this world of embodiment, of coming home to your own body. That's the beauty of it. It's a beautiful thing to come home to your own body. It will have huge impact in your life. And I think it's massively needed in the modern world. I kind of feel like embodiment used to be a luxury. Now it's a must-have. Now it's like, you're going to go crazy without this in this techie, fast, disconnected world we're in. Connection, that's another thing we could say is key to embodiment. Embodiment's all about self-connection. Connection to self, connection to spirit, connection to, say, higher power or purpose or meaning, connection to others, connection to nature. Connection, that's all embodiment is really about. Don't have to make it too complicated. Hope that helps. Key things following up from this: find a teacher, find a practice, do a bit of research, get into it, fill your boots, find some embodiment stuff you love. Enjoy. Mark Walsh here. If you like that, you'll probably like embodimentunlimited.com and our app. So on both of these things, you can get a bunch of podcasts that aren't available here, some exclusive ones with some big names, some people you'll probably recognize that are over there. There's a copy of my book, PDF, my first book on embodiment, which seems that people like. I sold quite a few copies on Amazon, but there's a free copy there. What else is there? Loads of videos of me coaching embodiment, resources on trauma, on meditation, on yoga. And you can also chat to people without going on Facebook or any of that nonsense. So if you want to chat embodiment with people, that's there. And it's on the embodimentunlimited.com, all free, and the app available at the App Store and all that good stuff. So if you like this, do check those out.